Hey guys, it's me LD. Today is March the 25th, and I'm here to welcome you to my second episode of Getting That Ass Larry. Thank you for everyone who gave me feedback to the first episode. I did take it into account, and I'm going to make two main changes to my approach to these hero guides slash first person commentaries. The first change is that I'm going to be focusing more on the hero that I'm playing slash teaching. So you're not going to see me look too much at what else is going on in the map, how other heroes are doing, what they're building, how they're or really what the state of the game is. So you're not going to know as much about the game that I'm casting, but the trade-off is that you'll get much more in-depth information and focus on the hero that I'm commentating about. So that's the first change. And the second change that I'm really going to try to make the commentary shorter. The last one was like 50 minutes, or maybe it was even closer to an hour. All I know is it was way too long. And I ran out of things to say, frankly. But I'm sure also, people can only stand listening to anyone, and certainly me, for so long about one hero. So those are the two main changes. You're going to see me try and keep it around 20 to 30 minutes this time, which means that you will see me fast forwarding if I've already covered a particular topic, or if I just don't feel what's going on is particularly important to talk about. So with that said, I'm going to review Shadow Demon's skill set now. Feel free to skip ahead if you just want to see the gameplay. So his first skill is Disruption. Disruption banishes the target unit, removing it from play for the duration. This means that the unit cannot take damage and will not be able to do anything. Upon returning, two illusions of the unit are created under Shadow Demon's control. So that's the description. Now, this skill is very similar to Outworld Destroyer's Astral Imprisonment. The only difference is that it creates these illusions. It's got a variety of uses. A couple common ones are it's good to escape ganks. So let's say the enemy is coming to gank you. And an ally is going to TP in, but you're waiting for them to get there. You can banish yourself, or you can banish the enemy and turn that gank around, or at least ensure you're on escape. Another example would be you can save an ally with it, so you can banish them if they're being focused in a fight, allowing your team to get the upper hand. You can also use it to dodge stuns or nukes. So let's say Lena is about to drop a light strike array in your ass. Well, go ahead and banish yourself, and she'll miss. It even lets you dodge targeted stuns and nukes. And global spells. So Furion's Wrath of Nature, Zeus's, I think it's Wrath of God, whatever his ultimate's called. Magic Missile from a Vengeful Spirit, a Stormbolt from a Sven. Anything can be dodged with Disruption. It's all about timing it right. And it's 2.5 seconds long, so it's really not that hard to time it right. You can also use it to create illusions which will help you push. So it can be used as a pushing skill. And especially if you use it on a unit that has a lot of damage or a lot of stats, the illusions will be pretty powerful. And they do last for a good amount of time at level 4, 8 seconds. That's plenty of time to push. It can also be used to set up kills. So a couple of examples of this would be that it synergizes well with his Shadow Demon's own skills, which we'll go over in a second. It helps you to land Soul Catcher, and you can also hit enemies with Shadow Poison, which is his third skill, when they're disrupted. You can also hit them with Soul Catcher while they're disrupted, just to make sure everyone's clear on that. It's also good for setting up hard-to-hit allied skills. So a couple examples would be Leshrac Stun, which has a crazy long windup. Light Strike Array from Lena, things like Morana's Arrow. And there's a lot of others. I'm only mentioning a handful, but it synergizes well with any hero that's got a hard-to-land spell. It'll help you set it up. Pudge's Hook, not so much, just because the illusions will often get in the way. If you shoot right in the middle of the disruption, you'll usually be able to hook the right hero, but it's pretty easy to mess up. Also important to note about this skill, the cooldown goes down significantly when it's leveled up from 25 to 16 between levels 1 and 4. So the cooldown going down is very important because this is a really useful spell. It's also worth noting this spell is a really strong counter to Anti-Mage as well as any hero who goes for a Diffusal Blade because illusions do get that mana burn effect. So if Anti-Mage gets disrupted, his two illusions will pretty much destroy all his mana if he doesn't blink out immediately. Also, the images scale with the hero that gets banished. So if you banish like a Morphling with, let's say, 6 tier 4 items, his illusions are going to hurt, man, because they're doing 60% damage. There's 2 of them, and they last for 8 seconds. So it scales well with any hero, and it's a pretty good late game spell as a result. It's a decent anti-carry spell. So that's Disruption. That's his most important skill. We'll talk about skill belt in a second, but normally you're going to get this at level 1 because it will help you survive if you get ganked. It's good for lane control, and it's really your most versatile level 1 spell. Shadow Demon's second spell is Soul Catcher. I'm going to read the description quickly. It curses a random enemy in an area to take increased damage. And this is important. It's a random enemy. And we'll talk about that in a second, about how to land it. The bonus damage is dealt as a separate instance of damage. Units under the effect of Disruption can still be affected by Soul Catcher. So basically, a couple things to note about this skill. It's similar to Witch Doctor's Maledict, so if you've played that hero, you can think of it as sort of like a Maledict because you have to target it on the ground manually. The difference is that Maledict will affect any hero that it hits, whereas this will only affect one random unit, not just any hero, one random unit in an area. So ideally, it can be tricky to land, and ideally what you want to do is to try and catch enemies with just the edge of it. So whoever you're trying to hit, you just get them with the edge of the AoE, and make sure the rest of the AoE is just hitting empty ground, and that way it'll be guaranteed to affect them. Also, important to note, you can affect enemies who are disrupted with Soul Catcher, so you can use Disruption to set up Soul Catcher and make sure you land it. So it can be pretty easy to land, but in a crazy team fight with a lot of units nearby, it can be pretty difficult. So it depends, but normally more effective as a ganking spell. Shadow Demon's third ability is Shadow Poison. This does magical-based damage. Just going to read the description here real quickly. It deals damage in a line and it afflicts enemy units with a poison effect. The poison deals 1, 2, 4, 8 times the stack damage based on the number of stacks of the target, up to 4 stacks. Basically what that means, if you're confused, is if they have 1 stack, it deals 1 times the stack damage. If they have 4 stacks, it deals 8 times the stack damage. So it grows exponentially, the amount of damage they can take. For each stack they get, it will increase exponentially the amount of damage they'll take when the Shadow Poison is released. Once you get beyond 4 stacks, there's no longer an exponential increase. It goes back to being linear. Well, not goes back, but it is linear. It's an additional 50 damage each. So anyway, this deferred damage is dealt when Shadow Poison's duration is expired or the release sub-ability is used. So basically, eventually they're going to take the damage if you don't do anything, but you can also choose to have them take the damage at a certain time. In terms of the damage, it goes from 20 to 65 for each stack, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about it, we're talking about exponential increase. So if the stack damage starts off at 20 at level 1, 8 times 20 is going to be 160. So that's not all that much damage, right? But then if you look at 8 times 65, suddenly you're talking about 520 damage just for releasing the Shadow Poison, and it can be amplified by Soul Catcher. So then suddenly Shadow Poison becomes a devastatingly powerful skill if you're able to get off enough stacks. Once you get beyond 4 stacks, again, it only increases linearly the amount of damage that the enemy will take. So it's normally not worth holding on to. It's better just to release it. And then if you want, you can continue applying stacks. It's got basically the way that you target Shadow Poison is it shoots like a long line, and you'll see as the game goes on exactly how it works. So think of it like a fissure, except it's a little bit narrower, Earthshaker's fissure, except it's a little bit narrower and it's got a much longer range. And you'll see just how long the range is. It can be extremely annoying to lane against for enemy heroes, but it's not very wide. It's a pretty thin line. The duration is 10 seconds, so after 10 seconds, if you don't manually trigger the Shadow Poison, it'll automatically blow up, or automatically be released. Okay, so that's Shadow Poison. And then you have the sub-ability called Shadow Poison Release. All that does is choose to manually release it. Now let me just talk a little bit more about some uses for this skill. It can affect disrupted units. I think I mentioned that. So you can have 2 stacks and someone disrupt them, get a 3rd and a 4th stack, both while they're in the disruption and right as they come out. It's got a variety of uses. It gives you vision, even though it's only small amounts. You can use it to scout uphill. Runes, you can check runes with it. You can check if the enemy teams are going to Roshan with it. If you think an Earthshaker's lurking in the forest waiting to blink on you and ult your entire team, then you can use it to scout there. It'll also disable blink daggers if you hit enemies with it, so it's pretty good for that. It can cancel enemy salves, bottle charges, or clarities in lane, so it's really annoying to lane against this guy for that reason, because it's very hard to regen without something that can't be cancelled, like a Rain of Health. And of course, most importantly, well, certainly important to note, this thing does a lot of damage, especially when it's being amplified. I mean, 520 damage before reduction, and then 50% additional pure damage. That's a crap load of damage. And it can be absolutely devastating, especially in the early game if you're soloing mid or soloing any lane really and getting quick levels. Like I mentioned, after 4 stacks, it's better to release it generally because the damage won't scale exponentially anymore. And sometimes it's better to release the poison prematurely to prevent the enemy from being able to heal up or allowing them to survive long enough for backup to arrive. So that's Shadow Poison and Shadow Poison Release. His final skill is Demonic Purge. I'm going to reread the description real quickly once again. It purges the enemy target unit, removing positive buffs. So if they have a haste rune, a regen rune, any sort of rune really, or something like, I'm trying to think, what's something that's already in the game? If they have like Slardar's ultimate on them, it'll actually remove that. So, well, actually no, it won't, because that's a negative buff. Can't think of a good example besides a rune offhand. But something like a Drum of Endurance, let's say the team uses a Drum of Endurance, it'll remove that drum charge from that hero. And there's lots of other positive buffs. I'm just having a kind of a brain lapse here. So anyway, it also slows the target, and it doesn't just slow them a little bit. It slows them a lot. If you've ever seen the Diffusal Blade in action, it's a pretty common pickup on the Stealth Assassin hero. It slows them that much, and it lasts longer. The unit slowly regains its speed until the end of the duration upon which damage is dealt. Units under the effect of disruption can still be affected by Demonic Purge. So you can disrupt a unit and then or you can purge a unit and then disrupt them, and they'll still take the damage and be slowed. It's kind of normally you wouldn't do it in that order, but it is an option. The only thing that goes up when you scale it is A, the damage, and B, how long they take to regain their speed. So like if it's level 3, they recover their speed really slowly, and if it's level 1, then they recover it much faster. You always want to get this at level 6. It's a lot of burst damage, and it synergizes really well with Soul Catcher. Sometimes you can make an argument for delaying the second level, since the only things that change are the damage and how like the purge lasts and how quickly they recover. It's normally best to take it whenever you can, though. The purge effect, not the damage, does go through BKB, so it's a decent counter to some BKB carries. One notable one that it's not very good against is Lycan, because Lycan cannot be slowed. Also worth noting, the synergizes well with Soul Catcher because it does a lot of extra damage, and Shadow Poison because it makes it easier to land a bunch of stacks. Okay, so that's all of Shadow Demon's skills. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about common ways, positions the hero can play, and then we'll jump into the game. So, one common position for Shadow Demon is the solo mid. In pub games, I personally think he's one of the best solo mids. He's certainly up there with heroes like Invoker, heroes like Viper, Obsidian Destroyer. He's one of the best lane controllers. He's a really good ganker. He's not overly farm dependent, so you don't have to sit in your lane for too long. If you ever get a good rune, you can usually translate it into a kill. So solo mid, if you do go solo mid, normally what you're going to want to do is max Shadow Poison first, Disruption second, and Soul Catcher third. Specifically, you want to get 1 point in Disruption at level 1, 1 point in Soul Catcher at level 2, and then get 3 points in Shadow Poison. You can save Soul Catcher for level 4 if you want. That's optional whether you get it at 2 or wait until 4. But the important thing is that you're maxing Shadow Poison first and getting 1 point in each of these. You get the ultimate whenever you can. Aside from that, once you've maxed Shadow Poison, you normally go back to Disruption. And that's because Disruption has its cooldown scales down quite dramatically, so it's a lot more spammable once you get it down, or up to rank 4 rather. Similarly, or conversely rather, Soul Catcher doesn't scale in terms of cooldown. Also, Disruption is guaranteed to hit because you target a unit, whereas Soul Catcher, it's a random unit in an AoE. So Soul Catcher isn't reliable, so normally you want to skill that up last, after Shadow Poison, Disruption, and Demonic Purge. So that's solo mid Shadow Demon. That's what I'll be showcasing. I will also mention he's actually a fantastic dual or tri-lane support, and he can be pretty effective as a roaming ganker if he's comboed with another good ganker, like an Earthshaker, someone who's got a difficult to line up spell or something that, even a Mirana arrow, although Mirana is normally better off just laning, but certainly some, lots of cool combinations you can experiment with. If you do go for that support style Shadow Demon, you normally won't max Shadow Poison first. What you'll do is max Disruption first, followed by Soul Catcher, and you can get a single point in Shadow Poison, simply because it's equally effective at scouting at all levels. So to not even get a single point is a huge waste. It's one of the best scouting tools, and it's free. So, well, it only costs 50 mana rather, so it's very useful. After that one level in Shadow Poison, you can even just get stats. You're probably not going to have the mana to support spamming Shadow Poison without being solo mid, and unless you get a quick Arcane Boots, if you get really fed, it's really not worth leveling it up too much. Okay, so that's my sort of introduction to the hero. Let's go ahead and we're going to unpause this game, and I'm pretty much just going to leave it on player perspective the entire game, and you're just going to see how I play the hero. So let me just remove that.
30 seconds to battle.
Okay, so I'm Shadow Demon. I'm going to solo mid. I'm actually going to put it on auto speed. So you'll notice that I chose to go with 4 Iron Branches and a set of Tangos. I like to do this on most heroes that I solo mid with, and the reason is that it lets me rush a bottle. I only need to get 300 gold to get a bottle, and we do have a courier, so I'll be able to send the bottle out to myself. And you get decent stats. Branches are very cheap. They give you good stats. Shadow Demon's a very strong lane controller, so he doesn't need too much regen. He can normally last hit pretty well, as he does have very good base damage at level 1. Now, if you're going to be up against another harasser who's equally good, then you might need to get a little more regen early, but generally you can bottle rush pretty effectively. So, nothing too exciting happened so far. I'm going to be laning against a Shadow Fiend, so just going to talk a little bit about this matchup. Now, Shadow Fiend, as you might have noticed in my previous commentary, is really scary if he gets some good last hitting going. So my focus is to make sure he doesn't get any last hits. Even if I miss a few last hits, that's okay. I'm going to be rushing bottle, and once I have the bottle, I'll be able to harass him pretty much with impunity. If you just look at his base damage, I don't think it's going to let me select him, actually. Yeah, he's got 46 base damage, so that's very low compared to me. I have 59. If I let him get the last hits, then he suddenly becomes a much bigger problem to deal with. So you're going to see I'm really focused on getting the last hits right now. Even taking a little harassment from him, that's okay. I'm actually going to use Disruption at level 2, or as soon as I hit level 2, mostly just because I wanted to make sure I got that last hit. And the reason that I don't mind wasting the mana is because I now have my bottle, so you'll see me setting myself that shortly. I'm spamming Shadow Poison quite a bit, probably more than I should be. You normally want to wait until Shadow Poison hits level 2 to spam it, but it's not too bad if you spam it a little bit at level 1. As you can see, I still have a decent amount of mana. Just make sure you always have enough for Disruption, at least if you're trying to go for a kill. You're actually going to see I'm over spamming it here, but, don't do that, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world if you do, as I am. Even when you don't hit the enemy hero, you're still making them focus on things besides last hitting. Like, this Shadow Fiend has to constantly be trying to dodge Shadow Poison, or he's going to take a lot of damage. Anyway, now that I have the bottle, and this is true for any solo mid who wants to be getting the runes, and almost all solo mids want to be getting the runes, is that I'm spamming my nukes to push the wave. The rune spawned at 2 minutes, so it just spawned, and I haven't checked it yet, but I'm not too worried about checking it because I'm pushing the lane. If Shadow Fiend goes for it, he's going to miss all those creeps that are at the tower. So if he actually wants to go for the rune, I'm fine with that. I can always use the courier to ferry my bottle and get some more mana that way. And if he doesn't go for the rune, then hey, I get the rune. I don't really miss any experience. You're going to see him go to check bottom rune. And this works out perfectly for me. I luck into a haste rune. One of the best runes to have on Shadow Demon, along with double damage. Really helps you set up kills early on. I mean, he can benefit from all the runes, honestly. He definitely could use a regen if he's spamming a lot. So you're going to see I'm continuing to just focus on lane control. I'm up to 14 and 6, which is a pretty good last hitting score, but more importantly, Shadow Fiend's 2 and 0. Now, I'm not going to lie, this guy was not the best player by any stretch of the imagination. He seemed pretty new and not the most experienced Shadow Fiend, but it's also just a horrible matchup for him. I've got much higher base damage, I've got much better lane control, and I'm really pushing that advantage. Like, if you have the better hero matchup, you need to take advantage of it and abuse it as much as possible. And that's what you see me doing here. I'm just constantly spamming the Shadow Poison. I'm almost out of mana at this point, but I know that I have the bottle with the haste rune, so I'm not even worried about it. You saw there, I manually released the Shadow Poison. That's just to make sure I got those 2 last hits. You can also do it to make sure you get a last hit on the hero. So you're going to see he tries to harass me back a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and eat a tango. I'm trying to save the haste rune for the 4-minute mark. Haste runes, if you ever get a haste rune, you want to try and pop it right as the rune spawns, because it'll pretty much guarantee that you get the next rune. The only exception would be if the enemy team is just camping the runes out at the rune spawn, which they will do sometimes, especially in a higher level game. So that's why I'm not popping it yet, even though I really want the mana. In any case, it's about to be 4 minutes, so I'm going to start pushing the wave. I'm actually a little bit late. You want to try and do this like around the 40-45 second mark so that when it's 4 minutes, the lane's already pushed. But because I have the haste rune, I'm not really concerned about him going for the rune. I can always pop haste, get some mana, disrupt him, and then go ahead and grab the rune ahead of him. So I'm waiting to use my bottle charges, that's why I'm running in circles around the rune. I now have the invis and the haste, I'm going to go look for a kill. I know the enemy is a Furion, I expect him to be jungling because I haven't seen him on the map. I just caught a glimpse of that Obsidian, so I'm going to dive him. I'm invis and I'm hasted, he's really low on the health. What I should be doing here, that I'm not, is using Shadow Poison to scout him out, so he can't juke me in the trees, but it's really not going to matter. I finally get vision of him. You're going to see I apply the Soul Catcher to him as well as shoot a Shadow Poison while he's disrupted, and they both affect it when he comes out. I probably didn't need to disrupt there, but I was worried about getting juked again. I think I just wasn't, kind of a brain fart, wasn't thinking about using Shadow Poison to scout, but in the end did secure the kill and really helped Bounty Hunter out because he was not having too good of a time versus that Outworld Destroyer. Keep on wanting to call him Obsidian because that's his Dota 1 name. You're gonna see me leading a parade of creeps back to mid. Generally, you don't want to do this. I was trying to pull them to the neutral camp. And the reason you don't want to do it is like the enemy knows exactly where you are, so you're a little bit easier to gank, but I'm not overly worried about being ganked. You're going to see in the bottom lane, Shadow Fiend is ganking, and that's my fault. I actually forgot to call it. It's a common mistake a lot of newer or distracted players make, of going to gank a lane and not calling their lane missing. It is a little bit hard to keep an eye on both, but it's still your responsibility to do it. And that ended up getting a teammate killed, so hey, that's my fault. At this point in terms of the item progression, I went for Magic Wand, Boots Bottles, pretty standard solo mid items, really good on any hero that uses spells, which of course Shadow Demon does. At this point, I'm saving up for Arcane Boots. I almost have the money for them, so I'm going to send the courier to the Secret Shop to be ready to pick up my energy booster. I'm actually missing a couple last hits, but overall I'm doing a good job. I'm up to 32 last hits in 6 minutes, so about 5 per minute. That's pretty solid, and I'm really annoyed because I'm just 50 gold short of being able to buy the energy booster now, and now I'm kind of monopolizing the courier, which you never want to do. I did check the bottom rune very late. I don't even know why I bothered to check. Shadow Fiend had an illusion rune, so this is just, you know, again, sometimes you're a little distracted and you make these mistakes, but don't try to be better than me and use your brain a little bit more. Okay, so this is the basic combination for setting up a kill. You disrupt them, you drop Soul Catcher on wherever they are, and just try to hit them with the edge of it. You can see it's... I don't think that's right. I guess is it really that big? I think that's bigger than it is. But in any case, you just try and grab them with the edge of it, and make sure there are no other enemy units in that AoE. Yeah, I guess it's just looking weird because of the elevations. In any case, yeah, hit them with the edge of it while they're in Soul Catcher, or while they're in Disruption. Shoot some Shadow Poisons on them, because it will affect them. As soon as they come out, immediately purge them. And that's pretty much a guaranteed kill. So I think you might have seen there, Shadow Poison did show me there were heroes TPing in. So that's one of the reasons why I was spamming it. Also just because I like to spam things and you can get away with it on this hero. Especially once you have the Arcane Boots and Bottle. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and back up and regen because the rune just spawned. I don't want to monopolize the courier too much anymore. And I'm kind of out low on mana. So at this point I noticed my team doesn't have wards. I think someone bought them but hadn't placed them. So hey, you're Shadow Demon, you don't really need that many items to be effective. If you get them, it's nice, but it's certainly not necessary, so I'm just going to buy wards for my team, even though I'm solo mid. In an ideal world, you probably don't do this, but again, you know, better to have the wards, even if you're not the ideal candidate to be using them, than to not have the wards when your team really needs them. And wards pay for themselves very quickly. If they even save one teammate from dying or get you one kill, then they've paid for themselves. Both in terms of the gold saved or in terms of the gold earned for your team. So I'm going to scout the rune with the Shadow Poison, you see me doing it there, and I realize it's bottom, so I ping the rune to let my team know. Or actually I think my teammate did that, I'm not sure. But either way, I'm going to go and try to get it. But before I do, I want to keep the lane pushed. You really want to minimize the amount of EXP you lose. I can see the runes there, and it doesn't really look like any enemies are going for it, so that's why I'm waiting. Ideally, you would have a teammate go camp the rune for you, and then go get it as soon as you push the wave out. Looks like Shadow Fiend trying to set up a gank here, right? Maybe expecting Invoker to do something, but you're going to see the power of the Shadow Demon. Soul Disruption into Soul Catcher, into Shadow Poison, into Demonic Purge. Full HP Shadow Fiend dies almost instantly, just to a simple magic missile and a couple of spells from the Shadow Demon. At this point, I've really done a great job. Again, because my job was mostly to shut down Shadow Fiend and to gank. You know, even if I wasn't farming well, it would be fine, as long as I'm shutting down their carry solo mid and controlling the runes. You can see I'm scouting behind the tower with Shadow Poison. That's because I saw Invoker was there. And I should be continuing to scout, but we're running out of creeps, so I don't really want to tank too many tower shots. Bounty Hunter's on a killing spree, so again, you know, you do those early game ganks, it sets up your team for the rest of the game. So not only, you're not just getting the one kill, it really has effects beyond that, and it's one of the most important things to do when you're a mid ganker, is don't just sit in your lane if you can set up kills. I'm going to dive really aggressively on Invoker here, and I think I was trying to tell Enchantress to come with me, but we weren't on the same page. So in the end, it ends up not being the best idea. I'm going to actually go for him here, so I drop Soul Catcher sort of to the left of him to make sure that only he's affected by it, and then I purge him. He actually Ghost Walks, but you can see just how much damage he took. He almost died to that combination, even though he only had 3 stacks. If he had one more stack, he definitely would have gone down. So that was a bit of a misplay by me.
Radiant's bottom tower is
It's
under
now 10
attack.
minutes, and I don't think I ever made it down to bottom to check that rune, so it's still the haste there. Don't do this. I should have gone to get the rune as soon as I pushed the wave. Not only to get it for myself, but also to deny it to the opponents. In the end, though, my team's off to a good start. It's really not the biggest deal in the world. They're going to get bottom tower, so I think at this point I was like, I'm going to get the rune and then let's get mid tower. You got to be a little careful when you're doing this. So like they just push down our tier 1, so it's very likely that they'll come mid to try and defend their tier 1. In this case they don't, but I was definitely wary about getting ganked. I see Invoker TP in behind the tower. We have a bunch of people here, so I'm going to disrupt him. I'm going to soul catcher him, and then he's going to drop absolutely really quickly. And that's already level 1 soul catcher. So when you actually level that skill up, it gets way more effective. But again, I'm maxing disruption first because it's more reliable. So at this point, I have a haste rune. Sometimes, when you have a haste rune, just sort of a tip to the newer players out there. If you're pretty low on mana and stuff, you're not going to be able to use it to gank or to do anything useful. Use it to run back to base because it's sort of like having 2 TP scrolls. You get there very quickly. You're going to see it buy 2 TP scrolls. It's worth mentioning. If you can afford more than one, always buy 2. Or at least 2. Sometimes even 3 is nice. And the reason for that is that you won't have to worry about getting another TP scroll. You'll have it on you, and when the TP cools down, you'll be able to use it. So we're looking to push the tier 1. We know that we have 4 people up here. We see there are at least 2 enemies in the middle lane, which means we can be very aggressive. You're going to see me put a ward down here. This is a great ward whenever you're trying to push a tower. It gives you good vision. As you see the combination of Shadow Poison, Disruption, Soul Catcher, picking off the Obsidian Destroyer. Freya TP'd in with the Dag. I was almost able to pick me off, but some nice teamwork from some nice help from my team was able to save me. I probably should have disrupted myself to be safe there, but I think I just didn't really notice Freya until it was too late. I'm going to continue to scout with Shadow Poison as well as push the lane. Reason for this is, A, to scout, and B, just to make sure that our creeps can be ahead to hit the tower. So I'm blowing it up after 3 stacks just because I want the last hits. It's kind of being greedy in this game. I mean, I should probably be letting the Bounty Hunter get some more farm, as he's our best late game carry along with the Sniper. It doesn't matter too much though because we're pushing well, and you can see this ward coming in handy. It's letting us know if they come to defend the tower. Showcasing another usage of Disruption here. This time I'm going to use it to push the tower. You can see the illusions hit quite hard, even though I'm not really building as a damage dealer. Just because they do that, well, it's 50% damage. I actually went back to Soul Catcher. I should have maxed Disruption. I think this was just a brain fart or a misclick by me. And I don't think I noticed that I wasn't maxed for a while. But yeah, generally you would want to max this before going back to Soul Catcher. I have my 4 staff now. I'm actually going to go back to base just to get some mana. I probably didn't need to, but not only do I need mana, but it just doesn't look like there's any gank opportunities. We just pushed to tier 1. We had got a sniper farming bottom. My whole team was running away from top, and all of the enemy heroes were missing, so not really a good time to be ganking, so I might as well heal up so that when the next opportunity does come, I'm ready for it. In terms of the skill build, I go for the item build rather, I go for a 4 staff. So you get the Arcane Boots, the bottle, and the Magic Wand to make sure that you have the mana and HP you need to gank and be effective. And then beyond that, it's all utility items and wards. So you're either getting support stuff like a Smoke of Deceit, you're getting wards if your team needs them, you're getting counter wards if your team needs them. And beyond that, you're just getting useful utility items. So in this case, I go for a 4 staff. 4 staff is really good in this game because they have a Furion. And it allows you to push an ally or yourself out of Sprout, so it's a good counter to him. Not only is it a good counter to Furion, but it's just also a great item for Shadow Demon. It helps you to escape, it helps you to save allies if they're in trouble. It also will allow you to set up, it essentially gives you much longer range, so you can 4-staff yourself in and disrupt an enemy. You can 4-staff them into your team and disrupt an enemy, so it's got a lot of synergy with his other spells. If an enemy's about to escape, and you can disrupt them on the edge, you can 4-staff, like let's say an allied Earthshaker next to them, and then he can stun. So again, it's good synergy with his other skill set. It's always good on ganking heroes. It's a great item in general. So that's why I picked it up. I popped the haste rune here. Not really sure why. I wanted to gank these guys, but there's just too many of them. So I'm actually going to go in here. This is pretty risky. Again, Disruption and Soul Catcher. I see the enemy courier when I have a haste rune on, so I immediately go for it. Actually, the haste rune wears off. Even if I had died there, that would still be a good trade. I'm on a kill streak, so they would get a little extra gold, but killing the enemy courier is pretty much like getting a free tower. It's 750 gold, so it's almost as much as a tower. And it respawns. This is a big no-no by them. They have a walking courier at 15 minutes in the game, and they're sending it really far out. And they don't even have a tower where they're sending it, so that's definitely a blunder by them. You never want to be in this position. And the reason that they have that walking courier, I'm guessing, is because they have they have 5 heroes that are very level and farm dependent. So probably not the best pub lineup, to be honest. Although they have a lot of strong heroes. Someone needed to be playing support. Someone always needs to buy that upgraded courier and wards. Even if you're a carry, if no one else is doing it, you might as well. At this point, I see Bounty Hunters looking for a kill, and I think about going to help him. At least here's some Shadow Poisons in his general direction, but you're going to see him go in on a huge number of enemy heroes. Actually, that might be later in the replay. Furion TP's on me. I could have 4-staffed out immediately. I was waiting for him to sprout me. He does end up missing. I see that Venge is here, so I think about turning around, because we have a lot of burst damage. But I think better of it, realizing that he has a Dagon, and decide to back off. Bounty Hunter going to be chasing what looks like Shadow Fiend, and probably going to die. This is the part where Bounty Hunter just feeds. Kind of unfortunate for him. He does run into 5 enemy heroes, but yeah, don't gank by your own, especially not when you have a team that can help you. So at this point, you might have noticed my wards. I have a lane ward in the top lane. I have this lane ward. I have a sort of standard rune ward that sees ancients as well as any ganks coming. And I have a really aggressive ward in their jungle. I placed this ward here because they have a Furion, so they're likely to be ganking. Or he's likely to be farming in the jungle, and it allows us to gank him. I get Astral Prison here, but that's no problem because I have the 4-staff, so I just 4-staff myself onto the high ground. Even if they had some disables and really went for me there, I'm pretty sure I would have lived. And the other reason I placed this ward and this ward were to help protect the sniper when he farms, because he had been feeding. He's 1 and 3. His farm's pretty good, but that's mostly just because we're giving him the space for it. But again, this is the standard combo. You disrupt, you soul catcher, you shoot shadow poisons on cooldown at them, and you use demonic purge. And you don't have to KS by releasing shadow poison like me. But as a pub game, I figured we have this game in the bag, so I want a couple kills on my record. But again, in a more competitive game, or in a higher skill game, you generally want to let your carry, which would be the bounty hunter or the sniper, get those kills. At this point, I'm going for a bracer. I noticed my HP was still in 3 digits, which is pretty dangerous against so many nukers. I mean, they can do a lot of burst damage. A Furion ultimate, his Dagon, Invoker's got some nuke damage. Shadow Fiend's got a lot of nuke damage, and of course, so does the Death Prophet. In any case, I 4-staff myself in right as Venge swaps the guy to me. Disruption, Soul Catcher, and the guy's dead. It's just such a strong ganking spell. One of the best ways to deal with Shadow Demon in a pub is to not be in these situations where you can get ganked. Especially once you see he's got a 4-staff and he's owning hard, you really need to run as a team for a couple of reasons. First of all, he's less likely to hit Soul Catcher. Secondly, he's not going to be able to spam Shadow Poisons as easily. They just keep on running in one at a time, and this is right in Shadow Demon's wheelhouse. Again, it's a simple combination: Disruption, Soul Catcher, Shadow Poison, and if you have it, you purge as well. And the way they're playing this is just not correct. In these larger engagements, Shadow Demons, he's still a decent hero. He's got some good CC between the Disruption, the Soul Catcher, and the Demonic Purge, but it's not, he's no Earthshaker, he's no Tidehunter. He's much more interested in these small engagements. So, while Shadow Demon wants to look for those, if you're the enemy team, you want to try and prevent him from getting them. Either by just avoiding fights with him or making sure your whole team's there when you have them. So I'm going for Drum of Endurance. Like I said, I felt my HP pool was low. It's a really cost-effective item in general. It gives you almost as many stats as an Ultimate Orb and costs, I think it's 300 or 400 gold less. So it's very cost-efficient stats. And it's a great team item. What's it called? The Drum of Endurance's active ability gives your team plus 10 movement speed, as well as plus 10 attack speed, which cannot be underestimated. So Furion's going to try to TP out here. I should have probably saved Soul Catcher to prevent that, especially once I saw Bounty Hunter use a Shuriken, but it just doesn't matter. We have too much burst damage. So at this point in the game, we're like really far ahead. It's 14,000 gold lead. I have these really aggressive wards up. I think I've pretty much showcased the basics for Shadow Demon. The only few things I'll mention is, as the game goes later, generally you're going to want to use Disruption either to shut down enemy carries and force them to change targets, or to just do a bunch of damage. So Disruption, like who you target with Disruption, becomes a lot more important later on. Whereas in these early engagements, it's all about just disrupting whoever you can, either to save allies or get kills. Especially if you're up against something like an anti-mage, you're going to want to make sure that you disrupt him later on. We're diving really greedily here. This is a bad idea. The enemy should be able to punish us, but they're not very confident, so they're backing off. Actually, at this point, I'm going to go ahead, and I want to say this is it. Like, I was going to go through the whole replay, but I think I pretty much covered it, and rather than just talking at you for another 20 minutes, like, I think this is enough for everyone to get a good sense of how to play solo mid Shadow Demon. I think I've gone over the skills pretty well. In terms of item progression at this point, you pretty much want to go for a Hex. You can get a Necronomicon, it synergizes well with him. For more of a comedy route, you can get a Dagon just for crazy burst damage, especially when combo with Soul Catcher. But generally you're going to want to get a Hex, especially against this many carries. So, you know, if you want to watch the rest of the game, I will put the match ID in the description. But this is pretty much it. This is how you play solo mid Shadow Demon. I'm by no means a perfect Shadow Demon player, but I think I've given you a good overview of how the skills work. So I'm going to cut off here, guys. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, leave it in the comments. As always, I'm LD. I also do some Dota 1 professional commentaries, and I like to do Dota 2 commentaries. I'm going to have one coming up shortly, but for the most part I haven't been able to get my hands on the replays to do them. So that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for watching again, and as always, if you enjoyed, please subscribe. GG.